Inspirit Nutrition, your brother, your friend, your dietitian, back again for another installment. Why I hate white privilege. Let's get it popping. So, what is privilege? Privilege comes from a word, a more ancient word, privilegium. I can't pronounce it, but it means private law, or a privilege granted to a private individual or private person. So when you deal with white privilege, you're dealing with something that is special and unique to that private person or group, whether it's a burden that they don't have to carry or they don't have to worry about, or something that is a ticket to success, something that's peculiar to them specifically, uniquely beneficial only for them in that category. So that's what we deal with white privilege. So why do I hate white privilege? The first reason that I hate white privilege is because it masks the privileges that people who are not in that category inherently have. What am I talking about? White privilege, just like any other philosophy or belief, is a belief system. Belief systems govern activities and behaviors of human beings and groups. So you have Catholicism, you have Christianity, you have nationalism, patriotism, Judaism. You have so many isms that govern the physical behavior and beliefs and mind states of people. So anytime you change a belief system, you change behavior. So if you change your belief system, you can change your world. White privilege, in my opinion, is a belief system. Inherently, being who I am, being who you are, and being where you're from, you have privileges, benefits that are granted to you uniquely and privately because of where you're from. But what I've noticed in my own personal path is that when I focus on privileges outside of myself, privileges means there's a door that closes that blocks you out of it if you're not a part of that group. So when I focus and I magnify someone else's privileges, now the fact that I'm not white, I may be Punjabi, or I may be from Mexico, or I may be from Sri Lanka, or I may be from Madagascar, or Fiji, wherever you want to say in the world. And I'm magnifying the privileges of another group of people. And so what happens to all the privileges and aspects that I may have, all the micro experiences that I had? They become dwarfed, or they don't even become recognized. That's why I hate white privileges, because there's so many people who are not white who focus and magnify on this privilege, quote unquote, that people don't have, that only people of that group have. That's the first reason. Skin color is the poorest test of a man's greatness. Man doesn't derive his mental complexion from his physical complexion. So understanding myself and knowing that greatness comes from within has nothing to do with societal ideals about who deserves privilege and who doesn't. Greatness is merited just off of greatness. Greatness knows no color line. Greatness knows no color. So anyone can be great. I hate white privilege because, one, it is a belief system, and everyone is governed based off of belief systems, right? If you believe that you're good enough, you'll behave like you're good enough. If you believe in Christianity, you'll behave like a Christian. If you believe in Buddhism, you act out Buddhism. It governs behaviors and actions. So you can change your life by changing your belief system. If you believe in certain limitations, you act based off those beliefs. If you believe in certain belief systems like white privilege, you act out that belief. So I despise white privilege because it disempowers people. Because if you focus on, say you're playing chess, right? And you're playing chess against an opponent, and all you focus on is the benefits and privileges and greatness that this person has had coming up and studying chess, and you totally neglect your powers, your innate abilities, your creativity that you could tap into and utilize on the chessboard, it disempowers you. What benefit does white privilege, recognizing white privilege, have in aiding my progress and greatness? Some people could argue, because of if we recognize that we can change society and stop people from profiling people or stop people from giving privileges specifically to that group. You change society by changing yourself. Stop disempowering yourself and focusing on the next person's privilege and recognize your privilege. That's one reason why I hate white privilege. It disempowers people because they focus too much on the privileges outside of themselves. The next thing about white privilege that I despise and I don't like when people believe in it is the belief that there's so many, privileges. It's like, woe is me. It makes people victims. When you become a victim of society and you become society's victim, you exaggerate all your weaknesses. You create hyperbole and you embellish your weaknesses because you're magnifying them, and you denigrate all your positives. So if you have all this greatness because you have come from an interesting culture like a Mexican culture, or you come from South Central, you were raised in Watts, or you come from Hyderabad in India, or you come from a certain part of Asia, or Tanzania, you come from Kyrgyzstan, you come from Taiwan, but your focus is on white privilege. Now you come from the victim mentality, and the problem with the victim mentality, like I said, you magnify your weaknesses and you denigrate your strengths. You lessen your strengths. Whereas if you flip the script, you can say, these are all my advantages from being from this point. White privilege, that's society big up in that. If it exists, yes. Adversity exists. Adversaries are going to exist. Obstacles are going to exist. Of course they're going to exist. But how do you empower yourself? How do you focus on greatness that you have? So that's one reason why I despise and hate white privilege, is because it masks the privilege that other people have innately. The next thing that I don't like about white privilege, when people magnify it and believe in it, is that it's kind of insulting, because it's a societal belief. It has social power only because of society. But it disconnects us from our innate inner power. Yeah, there's privileges that's been given to society by certain groups because of history and oppression and people, imperialism, and setting things up. But you disconnecting yourself from the divine source. You're made in the image and after likeness of the God, of the creator of the universe. Think about it. We're on a planet spinning around in space, and you're a divine son. You're a divine daughter. Being from Mexicali, being from Delhi, being from Nairobi, being from Seoul, Korea, being from New Zealand, whatever you want to plug in. You're telling me that you're going to magnify and focus on white privilege? There's like over 1 billion stars out there. People are going to Mars and finding water, but your limitation and our focus is going to be on white privilege? You have divine powers waiting to be expressed, and our focus is on white privilege. Look, let white privilege exist in the little societal space that it exists in, and you tap into your universal creative powers, your universal will, and express that. Okay? Another thing is that being in a first world country, most people that exist in first world countries, they're in the top 10% of the world population in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, in terms of financial, well-being, GDP, gross domestic product, etc. People who talk about privileges have access to internet, have iPhones, most extremely powerful phones that we didn't have 10, 20 years ago. The strong economies that people would fight for, people in other countries would die for, literally are dying refugees or people who are coming as immigrants. I've met people travel from Honduras, pregnant, climbing mountains to get here, in El Norte to get privileges that we're talking about. You know what I mean? We're talking about privileges. It masks your eyes for all the benefits and opportunities around you, because it goes back to, again, that victim mentality of woe is me. Change your beliefs, change your perspective, you change your world. The child in Nigeria who studies, 10 hours a day. The Korean and Japanese children who are going to school for hours and hours and hours and studying to get to the wonderful schools that we could more easily get to, being citizens and having an opportunity here. We can walk up to the school and get information, things like that. These are privileges that we're ignoring because we're saying, oh, white privilege. What you focus on grows. So focus on the privileges that you have. Another thing that white privilege does, it makes us forget that every disadvantage is actually an advantage. People who are given things easily, they don't learn and benefit from that because they didn't have to fight for what they have. They didn't have to think creatively on their feet to solve problems. Things were just handed to them. So sometimes advantages are actually disadvantages and disadvantages are advantages. I'll give you an example. I always wanted to travel to Latin America. I didn't have the privilege of just going when I wanted because I didn't have parents who could just pay for it, right? But I eventually created the opportunity because of the circumstances that I was in. I used my circumstances to my benefit, to benefit me. And I had only a month's time to go and learn Spanish like I wanted. Other people have the privilege of going traveling for a year, going for 6 months, going to study for a semester. I had pressure. That time pressure produced a diamond wherein I learned a lot of Spanish. I learned extensively because of that disadvantaged time period. A lot of your disadvantages can be turned to your benefit. It's called alchemy, mental transmutation. I do not like white privilege because it masks the divinity within us, the divine privilege that we have, the privilege that we have being from the top 10%. If you have a degree, you're in the top percent. If you have a master's, you're in an even smaller percentage. You live in America, you're in the top percentage of, privileged people on the planet. There's no excuses right now, and there's no reason to put yourself in a victim mentality. And there's no reason to believe in a belief system that disempowers you. This is not a fight against the fact that white privilege doesn't exist or racism doesn't exist. I believe that it exists, but it's none of my business because I'm not here to fight that. I'm here to manifest greatness. So greatness knows no color. Okay? That it does exist. I experience it every day. Being a young black male living in America, I experience it. Trust. But I have to focus on my advantages, my privileges, because those are going to empower me. It's not to say that you totally ignore what's going on in society, you don't study it. You study it, you master it, you understand it. Okay, I'm going to be disadvantaged because of these, A, B, C, and D. Society is saying A, B, C, and D about me. You understand that perspective totally, and then you say, okay, knowing that, I'm going to use all my privileges I got here, the divine privileges, the history, my family, where I'm from, and I'm going to navigate racism, oppression, obstacles, whatever, and you move forward. But you don't neglect all your privileges and just put this on a pedestal and say, man, white privilege, it's really holding me down. It's really holding me back. Even being a male privilege, yeah, it does exist. All of it is real. You have to look at it and say, okay, that all exists. It's going to try to hold me back in these different ways. Now that I understand the ins and outs of it, let me use everything that I have to my benefit, and let me focus on this. But I'm not going to forget, the game they're playing. I understand it, but I'm not going to believe it entirely and give it full credence and make me feel less than. The goal is to inspirit, enliven, encourage your brother, your friend, your dietitian back again for another installment. Inspirit Nutrition. Remember, magnify, and focus on your privileges and advantages. You are a divine child. You are poderoso. You are powerful. Your brother, your friend, your dietitian back again for another installment. Inspirit Nutrition. Peace and blessings.